Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. Today we're going to cover the Bastion system in the Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide for 2024. This is a newish system that kind of covers player housing and how that's going to work if your DM chooses to put that system into your games. But before I get started with that, if you are a new viewer to this channel or a returning viewer who hasn't hit that subscribe button yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button either now or by the end of this video if you like what you saw. I know not everyone affords the Dungeon Master's Guide or even is a Dungeon Master. I think it's just helpful to kind of know what's there available for you. You shouldn't pester your DM to put Bastions or whatever optional features that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide into their games if they don't want to do it. But I think it's just helpful to know kind of what is there for you and how things work in case it comes up, so you're not like caught off guard if your DM is suddenly like, hey, we're doing Bastions this time. This is going to be a long video. I don't want to spend too much time here just in the intro, so let's go ahead and get started and see what we're working with. So starting with just how you gain a Bastion, well, of course, first the DM has to choose to put Bastions in their games. Not every campaign is necessarily a good setting for Bastions. They do require not only a lot of time to happen, but also they need to have a certain kind of adventure structure where players can return to a certain location repeatedly. In the situation where a DM says, yes, we're using Bastions, a player acquires them automatically when they reach level 5. Any work that is going into creating that Bastion is assumed to be happening up until that level, so it's just automatically available to you. How the Bastion looks on the outside, what kind of structure it is, if it's a tower, a guild hall, or a tavern, or whatever it is entirely up to the player. The Bastion contains also basic facilities as well as special facilities. Basic facilities are just things like bedrooms and kitchens and parlors and things like that. But the special facilities are the only things that actually have mechanical benefit. There's also a thing called a Bastion turn. Basically, this is just an upkeep event that reflects the kind of upcoming passage of time. That's what's going to happen within that Bastion. This is when you actually make the orders to the special facilities at your Bastion to do certain things. The default frequency is every 7 in-game days. And there's different situations where you might issue a Bastion turn. So, for example, if all the players are away at that 7-day mark, then the maintain order, and we'll talk about each order later, but the maintain order is given to the entire Bastion to just kind of do business as usual. There's no special orders that are given. If there is extended period of downtime, the DM might say something like, hey, you guys have 6 weeks to just kind of spend in your Bastions and do whatever. You can resolve 6 Bastion terms. Let me know how that goes. If you're returning to your Bastion in the middle of adventure, the DM might say you have 1 night to spend in your Bastion and then you're going to leave in the morning. So, take a Bastion turn now. Or if you're adventuring near your Bastion and returning to it regularly, the DM might say, okay, it's been a week since the last Bastion turn. Let's go ahead and take another one right now. So it should be something that takes, not that long, depending on what's going on or how much role play maybe takes place at that time. But it should be a relatively quick occurrence. And then the frequency of Bastion turns, your DM might choose to slow it down depending on the pace of the adventure, or even speed it up if it's a fast campaign that occurs very quickly, but they still want to include this system. So the DM decides the pace, but the default is every 7 in-game days. Moving on to the Bastion maps, the players are encouraged to create their own floor plans. This is not only to be more invested in their Bastion, but also increases the verisimilitude or the concept of a realism within the Bastion to know which rooms are connected to which things. So if you're describing how you move through your Bastion, you can describe that more accurately. Things like closets, corridors, ramps, staircases, doors, and windows are all free to add, but they can't expand the space of a facility within the Bastion and can be added within reason. You can also add defensive walls to your Bastion. This costs 250 gold and 10 days per 5-foot square of the wall. Once you have a wall that encloses your entire Bastion, it reduces the number of basically attacker dice that you roll if your Bastion gets attacked. And again, we'll cover that much later. Players can also combine Bastions. This doesn't really have any specific mechanical benefit. They're still operated as separate Bastions for each player. In the event of a Bastion attack, players who have combined Bastions, one player can share defenders with the other player if their particular Bastion is attacked. Moving on to the facility space. The facility area are measured in 5-foot squares and they come in 3 different sizes. The squares of these areas can be stacked on top of each other however you would want them to be, as long as you have that number of squares. So I have some examples here. So the facility space, it can be cramped, which is 4 squares. We can see that there's sort of a landing space on this little illustration I created with stairs going up to a space that has 3 more squares. Or a roomy space might be like a little landing space with stairs going up to a smaller space, and then maybe a hallway to another space over there. Again, it can just be one big room if you want it to be like that, or it can be more specific like I've illustrated here. And then finally, there's the vast space, which is 36 squares. And then you can either expand the existing space or, create more hallways and, doors to other places, however you want it to look, as long as it's, 36 squares maximum. Moving on to the basic facilities for the Bastions. The Bastions start with 2 basic facilities. One is cramped and the other is roomy. Players can have more than one of each kind. It doesn't really matter how many you have, but you do start with just 2. Basic facilities include things like bedrooms, dining rooms, parlors, courtyards, kitchens, and storage. Each comes with non-magical furnishings and decor as the player wants it to look like. They offer no intrinsic mechanical benefit. There's kind of little flavor pieces or set pieces if you want to have certain scenes in certain areas. Players can add additional or enlarge existing basic facilities given the time and money to do so. And a player doesn't need to be present in their bastion while the facilities are being added or enlarged. So to add a basic facility, you need to spend a certain amount of gold and a certain number of time to add that facility to your bastion. So a cramped space costs 500 gold and takes 20 days. A roomy facility costs 1,000 gold and takes 45 days. And then adding a vast facility, a basic facility at least, costs 3,000 gold and takes 125 days. Then you can also expand on existing facilities. So going from cramped to roomy costs 500 gold and takes 25 days. And then going from roomy to vast costs 2,000 gold and takes 80 days. Looking at the special Bastion facilities, these are the facilities that grant in-game benefits. You get 2 of them starting at level 5, and you'll get more later on. Player can only have 1 special facility of any kind unless the description of that facility says otherwise. The facilities can't be bought, so you can't buy additional facilities beyond what you are just given. Special facilities are immediately added to the Bastion when you reach the appropriate level. Each time you gain a level as your character, you can replace one of your existing special facilities with a different one. So you can convert your lower levels facilities into higher level ones over time. Facilities do have special qualifications. Most of them are just based on what level you are, but some of them do have other prerequisites. So you need to qualify for that prerequisite in order to use that facility. Special facilities have a fixed size, though some of them can be expanded for other benefits if their description says that they can be. Special facilities usually come with 1 or more hirelings that perform the functions within that facility, and then the facility is assumed to make enough money on its own to support the living expenses of that hireling. So we can look at how we gain our special facilities. So again, you get 2 of them at level 5, you get 2 more up to 4 at level 9, you get an additional 1 at level 13, and then you get your final special facility for a total of 6 at level 17. And then remember that each time you level up, you can replace one of your existing special facilities with a different one for which you qualify. So when you reach level 9, for example, and you get 2 additional special facilities, you can also convert one of your old special facilities into another level 9 special facility. You can also do that when you reach level 10 or 11 or 12. You can just switch them out each time you level up, only one at a time though. Moving on to Bastion orders. These are orders that are given on Bastion turns to your special facilities. Orders can be given to any number of facilities, and you're not required to give an order to each special facility on each Bastion turn. The maintain order is a special order that can only be given to the entire Bastion, and when you give the maintain order or when the maintain order is given, no other orders can be given to any special facility within that Bastion. If players aren't in the Bastion on the Bastion turn, then the maintain order is automatically assumed, unless the owner of that Bastion can communicate with their hirelings, as such by the sending spell or similar magic. I think this answers at least one of the questions I had regarding the maintain order, because when I read this initially, I was like, what if I'm able to magically communicate with my hirelings either through, I said the magic mouth spell. Let's say that I cast that at a specific spot on my Bastion, and I tell my hirelings, hey, I'm going to be gone for a while. Every week, go to this location, speak this command word, and receive your order. And hirelings are supposed to be actual living people in the world, so presumably they have intelligence and can remember a standing order like that. So in my head at least, it seems like a reasonable request for them. Your DM might rule differently. I think the maintain order is maybe the weakest link in the Bastion system because there's so many ways to kind of work around it in that way. Whether that's exploitative or however you feel about it, let me know down in the comments how you feel about the maintain order specifically, because I just think it doesn't do much for me, actually. So moving on to the actual orders you can give your facilities. And again, each facility has a specific order that is associated with it. You can't just give any order to any facility. The craft order allows you to craft a specific item as described by that facility, but you can only do one at a time. The empower order allows you to get a temporary benefit either to you or someone else as described by that facility. The harvest order is much like the craft order, where you can gather a specific resource, but only one at a time. The maintain order, like I said, is an order that you give to your entire bastion, but when you take that order, the DM will roll on the Bastion event table and then resolve that event. The recruit order brings in friendly NPCs or allies or creatures per the description of the facility that serve a certain function. The research order allows you to gather certain information and may have additional benefits as well. And then finally, the trade order allows you to buy or sell goods or services per the description of that facility. So moving on to all these facilities, we're going to start with the level 5 facilities. We have the Arcane Study. This requires you to be able to use an arcane focus or a tool as a spellcasting focus. And you can note here that it says, or a tool, which includes the Artificer, even though it's not in the player's handbook. They made that caveat for them. It has a passive feature where if you finish a long rest, you can cast the Identify spell for free once within the next 7 days. It also has the craft order to craft an arcane focus, create a blank book, or craft a common or uncommon magic item from the Arcana bucket of magical items. Speaking of that bucket of magical items, here's the list of items that you could choose from. You can pause to read. I'm not going to go through each of them. Moving on to the Armory. The Armory lets you use the trade order to spend 100 gold plus 100 gold per defender you have in your Bastion to basically put a bunch of equipment in your Bastion. If you have a smithy, the cost is halved. And while your armory is stocked in this way, you have a lower chance to lose a defender when your Bastion is attacked because you roll a bigger die and you only lose defenders when you roll a 1. Moving on to the barracks, you can have more than one barrack per Bastion. You can use the recruit order to recruit up to 4 defenders at a time, up to a maximum of 12 for your barrack. You can expand this facility by spending 2,000 gold and increase the number of defenders you can have in there to 25. Moving on to the garden, you can have more than one garden as well. If you want to change from one type of garden to another one, it takes 21 in-game days to do this, and no other actions can happen in the facility during that time. The harvest order for this facility allows you to gather a certain resource depending on the type of garden you have. And then you can enlarge the facility to add an additional garden to that facility, and it can be of the same type of garden that you already have, or it can be a different one. So here's a table that includes the kind of gardens that you have available to you. You can have a decorative garden and harvest either 10 vials of perfume or 10 candles. You can have a food garden and harvest 100 days worth of rations. You can have an herb garden to harvest 10 healer's kits or 1 potion of healing. And then a poison garden to harvest 2 vials of antitoxin or 1 vial of basic poison. Moving on to the library, this allows you to research a legend, a known event or a location, a significant person, a type of creature, or a famous object. This occurs over 7 days. At the end of that 7 days, the hireling learns 3 accurate pieces of information about that topic, and they will tell you the next time that they speak with you. The DM determines what kind of information you learn. Moving on to the sanctuary, this requires you to be able to use a holy symbol or druidic focus as a spellcasting focus. It has a general benefit if you finish a long rest in your Bastion, that you can use healing word for free once within the next 7 days. It also has the craft order to craft a wooden staff as a druidic focus, or a holy symbol as your spellcasting focus. Moving on to the smithy, this has the craft order. You can either craft anything that can be crafted by the smith's tools, or you can craft a common or uncommon magic item from the armaments table. Speaking of the armaments table, these are the common and uncommon magic items that you could use. Again, you can pause to read. I'm not going to go through all of them. Moving on to the storehouse, this has the trade order. You have 2 different options when you make that trade order. You can either A, buy up to 500 gold worth of goods over that 7 days. And then once you have those goods in your storehouse, then you can use the trade order again to sell those goods at a profit over the next 7 days. The profit starts at 10% at level 5, 20% at level 9, 50% at level 13, and then 100% at level 17. Moving on to the workshop, you can choose up to 6 artisans tools that your hirelings are proficient with. You can issue the craft order to either craft any adventuring gear that can be made with the tools that you chose, or you can craft an uncommon or common magical item from the implements table. There's also a general benefit when you finish a short rest in your workshop that you gain heroic inspiration, and you can only do this once per long rest. It can also be enlarged by spending 2,000 gold. This gives you a couple more hirelings, and you can add 3 more artisans tools to your proficiencies for the workshop. This is the table for the common and uncommon magic items from the implements table. So again, you can pause to read. Moving on, we have the level 9 facilities, starting with the gaming hall. This has the trade order, but basically turns your facility into a gambling den over the next 7 days. You just, at the end of that 7 days, you roll a D100, and then you earn gold based on the table at the bottom of that image here. There's also a greenhouse. This has a general benefit of having a plant or a tree that has 3 fruits growing on it, and if someone picks the fruit and then eats it, they're granted the benefit of the Lesser Restoration spell. Fruit lasts for 24 hours after it's picked, and then all picked fruits are replaced daily at dawn. This has the harvest order where you can do one of 2 things. The first thing is you can either create a greater potion of healing after 7 days, or after that 7 days you can harvest 1 type of poison per the description. Moving on, we have the laboratory. This has the craft order, and you can either craft anything that can be made with alchemist supplies, or you can use the craft order to create 1 application of poison from the list specified in the description. We also have the sacristy. This requires you to be able to use a holy symbol or druidic focus as a spellcasting focus. This has the craft order that you can either use to create holy water for free, or when you craft that holy water, you can spend 100 gold up to 500 gold to increase the damage of the holy water. You can also use the craft option to create a common or uncommon magic item from the relic spell list. This also has a general benefit that allows you to restore up to a 5th level spell slot, assuming you spend a short rest in the sacristy, and you can do this once per long rest. So here is the table of the common and uncommon magic items from the relic list, so you can again pause to read. Moving on, we have the scriptorium. This has the craft option, so you can craft a copy of a non-magical book. I'm kind of curious if this includes the wizard spell books, because this seems like a very cheap and time-efficient way to create a copy of your spell book. It is unclear if a spell book is non-magical. I do believe normally they were. However, the spell book in the wizard description for it says that it can only be read if you cast the identify spell on it, and the identify spell more or less says that it can only work on magical items. So I'm not quite sure if that means that spellbooks are considered magical or what the deal is there. They can be used as spellcasting focuses, but spellcasting focuses aren't inherently magical items. So interesting there. I think if I were the DM, I would allow that to happen, because otherwise it's just so expensive and time consuming to create a copy of your spellbook. Of course, the first time that you do it, you would need to have your spellbook there. So you'd basically need to be able to spend a week in your Bastion to make that happen, or go a week without your spellbook and only have whatever spells you have prepared every day. But I think that's fine in my opinion. But you can let me know down in the comments what you would think about that. You can also use the craft order to create a spell scroll of a cleric or wizard spell of 3rd level or lower. You are still limited to the time needed to craft the spell scroll of that level and the money that it takes to do so. You can also use the craft order to craft up to 50 copies of paperwork such as brochures or pamphlets over 7 days. It costs 1 gold per copy. And then you can have your hirelings over that period of time distribute them to locations of your choice within 50 miles of your Bastion. Moving on to the stable, you can have more than 1 stable in your Bastion. It comes with 1 horse or camel or 2 ponies or mules. You can fit up to 3 large animals. And you can also fit 2 medium animals in the space of a large animal. So you can have 2 large animals and then 2 medium animals, 1 large animal and 4 medium animals, things like that. This has a passive benefit where if a mountable beast spends at least 14 days in that facility, you are granted advantage on animal handling checks with them. And it also has the trade order that allows you to buy additional mounts or sell existing mounts at a profit. This can also be enlarged by spending the 2,000 gold, and then you can fit up to 6 large animals. Moving on to the teleportation circle. This comes with a permanent teleportation circle. You are allowed to use the recruit order to recruit a friendly spellcaster. When you make this recruit order, you can roll any die that you have. If it's odd, the friend declines the invitation. If it's even, they accept it and they arrive by the teleportation circle. You can ask this friendly caster to cast 1 wizard spell of 4th level or lower at your request. The level of the spell increases to 8th level when you reach level 17. This friendly spellcaster stays for up to 14 days or until they cast that spell. And then if your Bastion is attacked, they don't act as a defender and they will leave immediately. Moving on to the theater. This is kind of an interesting one. I'm not enthused with it, but basically the long and short of it is that you take 14 days to rehearse and prepare for a performance. You and any allies can participate by either being a composer or writer, a conductor or a director, or a performer. Anyone who is there during that entire 14 days while you're rehearsing and preparing for this performance, they can make a DC 15 performance check at the end of it. and if more checks succeed than fail, each contributor, regardless if they pass or failed, gets to add a bonus die to one roll in the future, and then it's gone. This starts at a d6 at level 9, a d8 at level 13, and a d10 at 17. So this is kind of like getting Bardic Inspiration, but it takes 14 days to get it, and it only happens, you can only use it once. So it just feels like a lot of work to me for such a small boon. It is very flavorful, but I just kind of wish this one was a little better. Moving on, we have a training area. You can have more than one training area in your Bastion. You can choose a specific kind of trainer based on the table that we'll look at on the next slide. And then you can replace the trainer with a different one on each Bastion turn. When you have this facility, you have the Empower order. And when you give this order, you basically need to be able to spend the next 7 days, 8 hours per day, basically training this facility with the trainer of your choice. And then you're granted a benefit at the end of that 7 days that lasts for the next 7 days. So the Battle Expert gives you a reaction to reduce the damage from a weapon attack or unarmed strike by 1d4. A Skill Expert grants you proficiency in a skill from the list of skills here in the description. A Tool Expert grants you proficiency in tools for that 7 days. An Unarmed Combat Expert grants you additional 1d4 on your unarmed strikes for the next 7 days. And a Weapon Expert grants you proficiency in either one particular weapon, or if you already have proficiency in that weapon, you're able to use that weapon's mastery for the next 7 days. Moving on to the Trophy Room, this has the Research order that allows you to research a legend, creature, or famous object. After the 7 days, the hirelings learn 3 accurate pieces of information, and they tell that to you the next time you speak with them. The DM determines what kind of information you learn. You can also issue the research order to possibly discover a common magic item from the implements table, which we looked at previously. You need to roll any of your dice, and if it rolls an even number, then you discover that magical item. Now we're starting with the levels 13 facilities, so we're starting with the Archive. This has the research order that allows your hirelings to study for 7 days, and then at the end of that 7 days, they are able to basically learn information as though they had cast the legend lore spell, and they share this information with you the next time that you speak with them. It also has additional features where you have a reference book. You have a copy of one rare valuable reference book, which gives you a benefit while you and the book are within your Bastion. So basically what they do is they just kind of give you advantage on one particular check. You can either choose from one of the books below, or your DM might make another different kind of book with a different benefit available to you. You can also enlarge this facility by spending 2,000 gold, and you can add 2 additional reference books to the facility when you do that. Moving on to the Meditation Chamber, this comes with the Empower order. This grants you the ability to roll twice the next time a Bastion event occurs at your Bastion, and it allows you to choose which result that happens. This also has a general benefit called Fortify Self, where if you meditate for 7 days without leaving your Bastion, you have advantage on 2 different kinds of saving throws chosen at random. If you roll the same saving throw, then you just re-roll it. Moving on to the Menagerie, this can contain up to 4 large creatures, or 4 small or 4 medium creatures can take the space of 1 large creature. It doesn't look like you actually start with any of them. But basically you can take the recruit order to have your hirelings take the next 7 days to find a certain beast to add to your menagerie. You do have associated costs that we'll look at on the table on the next slide. These creatures count towards your Bastion defenders unless you specifically say that a certain creature, one or more of those creatures aren't, if you want to keep them more permanently. But if they are a defender, then when your Bastion, or if your Bastion is attacked, you can use them in that way. So here's the default list of creatures that you can add to your menagerie and the costs associated with them, as well as their size. Your DM may allow you to use other creatures, and the cost per challenge rating is determined by the table on the picture here. And it does say that typically only beasts or certain monstrosities can be kept within a menagerie. Moving on to the Observatory, this requires you to be able to use a spellcasting focus. It can be any kind of spellcasting focus, but just you need to be able to use one. It has a general benefit where if you finish a long rest in your observatory, you can cast Contact Other Plane within the next 7 days. It has the Empower order, which allows your hirelings to explore eldritch mysteries, and then they can confer a benefit to either you or a creature of your choice that is on the same plane as you. It's either a Charm of Dark Vision, a Charm of Heroism, or a Charm of Vitality. However, whether or not you get this charm is depending on a roll, so you just roll any of your dice. If it's an odd number, then you get that benefit. Moving on to the pub, this has the research option. So when you issue the research order, you basically have a network of spies in your pub. They discover important events happening within a 10-mile radius over the next 7 days, or they can divulge the information of any creature familiar to you, provided that creature is within 50 miles of the Bastion and not hidden by magic or confined in a space that the DM thinks that they wouldn't be able to get to. And if they learn the location of that creature, they know where it's been for those previous 7 days, not just where it is now. Additionally, your pub has a certain drink on tap that confers a magical benefit when you drink it. If it's not drank within that 24 hours, the magic of that drink, it kind of dissipates at the end of that 24 hours. And then you can enlarge the facility for 2,000 gold to have an additional drink on tap. So you can see here, the top drink here, like when you drink it, it gives you the effect of the enlarge spell for 24 hours, which is pretty cool. There's a bunch of other benefits here, or you might work with your DM even to come up with a special drink. Moving on to the reliquary, you must be able to use a holy symbol or druidic focus as a spellcasting focus. This has a general benefit where if you spend a long rest in your bastion, you can cast Greater Restoration for free once within the next 7 days. You can also use the harvest order to harvest a talisman that takes 7 days to craft, but then that can be used in place of a material component that has a cost of up to 1,000 gold. And if it is normally consumed in the casting of that spell, the talisman is not consumed. However, you can't use it this way again until you return to your bastion and issue the harvest order again. Moving on to level 17 facilities, we start with the Demiplane. This requires you to be able to use an arcane focus or tool as a spellcasting focus. Notably, it says here that the Demiplane in your bastion can't be dispelled. You can also move the door of the Demiplane around wherever you want to each time you take a bastion turn. This also has the Empower order, where if you finish a long rest in your Demiplane, you get temporary hit points equal to 5 times your level. This has a general benefit called Fabrication, where it allows you to create a non-magical object as a magic action while you're within your Demiplane. The non-magical object can't cost more than 5 gold, it can't be bigger than 5 feet in any dimension, and it must be made of a certain material as listed in the description of this facility. Moving on to the Guild Hall, this requires you to have expertise in any skill. When you gain this Guild Hall, you must choose a guild type of a certain kind. There's a sample list of guilds that we'll look at on the next slide, or you can work with your DM to create a particular kind of guild and whatever benefit that guild would confer when you take the recruit order. And then the recruit order allows you to basically give an assignment to your guild to perform a specific function that offers a certain benefit. So looking at the guild hall table, for example, assignment might include, like for a baker's guild, you sell baked goods or cater to a function with baked goods and earn gold that way. The Mason's Guild specifically is kind of cool because it allows you to add a defensive wall around your bastion for free, or you can make it faster to build walls for an allied bastion because it takes only 1 day per 5 foot square instead of 10 days, or that you can use the Thieves Guild to steal certain non-magical objects within a certain range. Then you can kind of pause to read here. I'm not going to go through each of them, but it's kind of cool. Moving on to the Sanctum, you need to be able to use a holy symbol or druidic focus as a spellcasting focus. It has a general benefit where if you spend a long rest in your bastion, you gain the ability to cast the heal spell once for free within the next 7 days. And it has the Empower order where your hirelings can spend the next 7 days performing a daily ritual, and then they can confer a benefit to you or a creature of your choice. Each long rest for the next 7 days while they're doing this ritual, at the end of that long rest, whoever's the beneficiary of that ritual gains temporary hit points equal to your level. You also have a general benefit where you have the Word of Recall spell always prepared, and the Sanctum is always a choice for the Word of Recall spell in addition to whatever location that you chose otherwise. And then if you do use the Word of Recall spell to return to your Sanctum, you can choose one target that returned with you to immediately gain the benefit of the heal spell. Moving on to the War Room, this requires either a fighting style or the unarmored defense feature. Notably, this excludes the Rogue, which is the only martial that doesn't get access to this one. I guess the Rogue has the Guild Hall of the higher level ones because they would automatically have expertise in a skill. But just something to notice that they don't by default have access to this. The War Room comes with 2 lieutenants by default. Each lieutenant in your War Room reduces the number of attack dice if your bastion gets attacked by 1. This can actually reduce the number of attack dice to 0, where it basically means if your bastion gets attacked, you can't lose any defenders. Basically nothing happens. You can use the recruit order to do a couple different things. You can either recruit an additional lieutenant, so you start with 2, but each time you use the recruit order to recruit another one, and then you can have up to 10 at once. You can also use the recruit order to have your lieutenants recruit soldiers. You can get up to either 100 guards per lieutenant, or you can put those guards on horses. And then you can have up to 20 of them per lieutenant. If you have these units, you do need to feed them every day, so it costs 1 gold per day to feed each unit. And if there's a day they go without being fed, then they just leave. If they're used as an army, either your lieutenants or yourself need to be able to lead them. If they don't have a leader, then they just disband. And then you can't use this particular recruit order again until the current army is disbanded. So that is all the different Bastion facilities. Let's go on to look at what the Bastion events are if you take the maintain order. So the Bastion events are, again, something that the DM rolls immediately after the maintain order is issued to an entire Bastion. The DM will roll on a table, and the DM reads the event aloud to the player who controls that Bastion. The event is resolved immediately and with cooperation between the DM and player to determine how it pans out. If multiple characters issue the maintain order to their Bastions, those are rolled separately and resolved separately, even if the Bastion is combined. Then there's also some guidance where, since the maintain order is usually by default taken if you are not at your Bastion during a Bastion turn, that it could play out as like a cutscene where you can kind of roleplay as your hirelings for a moment to kind of act out what event happens at your Bastion. So starting with the first type of event that can happen, where all is well, there's a 50% chance that this will happen. Basically, nothing significant happens. The DM can roll on the table below, or basically describe some mundane event that occurs at your Bastion. Moving on, there is a 5% chance that your Bastion can be attacked. When this happens, you roll 66. This can be reduced by certain facilities, as we described previously. For each result of 1 on those 66, the Bastion loses a defender. If a Bastion has 0 defenders and 1 special facility determined at random is shut down, that facility can't be used on the next Bastion turn, but then it's made functional again at no cost after that. There's also a 3% chance that a hireling's criminal past comes to light. You can pay 1d6 times 100 gold to keep the hireling, or you can just let them be arrested. If the facility is left with 0 hirelings, that facility can't be left on the next Bastion turn, but then they're replaced at no cost to you. There's also a 5% chance that a special event takes place at your Bastion. Basically, you're asked to host like a festival or a carnival, or a special dignitary is coming and there's some event happening with them. Basically, if you choose to go with it, you have to spend 500 gold to host it, and then you get to roll again on the Bastion event table, or you can just choose not to do it and you pay nothing and then nothing happens. There's also a 9% chance that you get a friendly visitor. Basically, it's just someone who wants to use one of the facilities at your Bastion. They will pay you 1d6 times 100 gold to use it, and it doesn't interrupt any of the standing orders of that facility. There is a 4% chance that you receive a guest that offers a minor benefit, as described down on this table. There is a 3% chance that your hirelings just are lost for whatever reason. The cause of that departure is up to the player. If this happens, that special facility, again determined at random, is unable to be used on the next Bastion turn, but the hirelings are then replaced at no cost to you. There is a 4% chance that there is a magical discovery. If this happens, you discover an uncommon magic item at no cost to you, but it must be a potion or a scroll. There is an 8% chance that you house refugees who are escaping a certain disaster, and they will pay you 1d6 times 100 gold for your hospitality. There is a 7% chance that a local leader will ask you for help. If this happens, you can choose to decline it and do nothing, and there's no penalty for that. But if you choose to accept, you can dispatch defenders from your Bastion to help with this local problem. Then you'll roll 1d6 per defender. If the value is greater than or equal to 10, the problem is solved successfully. However, if it's less than 10, the problem is still solved, but you lose one of your defenders, and then the reward for it is halved. And the reward for this is 1d6 times 100 gold. And finally, you have a 2% chance to find a random treasure as determined by the table below. And the circumstances of the acquisition are determined by the player as to how it's found or discovered or acquired. So for the total event breakdown, we can see that the chances of a positive event is 32%, and chances of a negative event happening is 13%, and the chance of just a neutral event where nothing good or bad happens is 55%. So, and again, I thought that the maintain order is kind of the weakest link in the whole Bastion system. I guess I'd have to see how it actually plays and actually play with the Bastion to kind of get a feel for it. But, you can let me know what you think about that in the comments below. So there's also ways that you can lose your Bastion. There's a few different ways. A character can either give up their Bastion at any time, basically just abandon it or, dismiss it. This can also happen if no orders are given to the Bastion for a number of Bastion turns equal to the player's level. Or if the deck of many things is in play and the player draws the Ruin card, they are immediately deprived of their Bastion, and they can decide whatever disaster or ruinous event causes them to their Bastion to be destroyed or whatever happens to it. In any event, Hirelings are quickly released and the place is abandoned. It'll quickly be vacated, looted, and even possibly burned to the ground. And then the player at any time can work with their DM to establish a new Bastion. So that is all for the Bastion system. I think I got some questions for you also. If you are a player currently, or even a forever player, if there is such a thing, what would one of your character's Bastions look like? I would be interested to hear about that. What kind of facilities would they have, and what would the reasons for those facilities be? If you have been or are currently a DM, or especially if you're a forever DM, are you interested in putting Bastions in your games? And specifically, if you're running official adventures, where do you think Bastions could fit, if at all? Would you speed up the Bastion turns or slow them down depending on which adventure module it's in? Because that was another concern I had as far as how they fit into the published adventures, because those usually take place very quickly, and I don't think that there's enough time for Bastions to really function. And then just general questions for everyone. Do you think that the attack defender system seems meaningful, or would you just want to ignore it? Because again, like I said, I think the maintain order is just kind of boring or just doesn't really do anything. How do you feel about that? Have you played with Bastions yet, either like in a one-shot or even just kind of played with them in general to see as a mini game, like just as a one-shot, just sit down and be like, hey, we're just going to take a bunch of Bastion turns. And then each time we'll add another Bastion facility and we'll see how it works out. That might be an interesting little way to just kind of get a feel for how they work. But yeah, let me know all that down in the comments down below. I'll be really interested to hear all that. And again, while you're going down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you like what you saw here and you're either a new or returning viewer who hasn't hit that subscribe button yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I'd appreciate it quite a bit. But I appreciate all your guys' time, and I'll see you in the next one.